Thank you all for having me here today. Just get organized. I can't quite see my slides, but I think I know what I'm saying. So it really is a great honor to be here with you as a thinker in residence in the social capital residences. This is the beginning of my fourth day in Adelaide, and I think I've had about 25 meetings in the first 3 days. So I've learned a lot in a very short period of time. I also have a strong personal connection to you and the mission of this group in the room. I consider myself a failed public sector intrapreneur. I actually studied to become a public administrator and to go into government, but unfortunately my first day of work was September 10th, 2001. And so it was a very challenging time to be a young idealist in the US government. And I tried my best to be an intrapreneur and to push some of my innovative ideas forward, but eventually I gave up. And so in another life, I would like to be on the path that you're on, but my destiny was elsewhere, and I ended up shifting into the social entrepreneurship space, which I'll tell you about now, today. So you heard a little bit about the Thinkers in Residence program. The focus of the one I'm participating in is on social capital, and the social economy, which I will actually explain a little bit about in my talk. As I mentioned, just a few bullet points to give you the context of my background, the beginnings in the US government, but I didn't last long. So I spent about 8 years in the social entrepreneurship and startup scene in Austin in a variety of different companies and nonprofits before going to the University of Texas to build the social entrepreneurship program there. I didn't last long in the university either. I wasn't a very good entrepreneur in that bureaucracy, so I started my company in 2013. But I remain very interested in public policy and public administration. I serve as the chair of the Mayor's Council on Social Innovation and Social Entrepreneurship. And actually, I really love talking about public policy and what we can do to support and foster this ecosystem. My background and my specialty has become in social innovation competitions, which I believe is actually a very powerful tool that government can use to drive innovation around social issues. These are just a couple of examples of the kinds of competitions that my team and I have run over the past 9 years. Today, the two that are still current with MetLife, we're running a global competition on financial inclusion. So how do we help disadvantaged households get into the mainstream financial economy through better access to banking, savings, credit. And we're also running a $10 million Clean Water Prize for the Everglades Foundation, which is looking for a technology that can remove phosphorus from fresh water as a result of over-fertilization. And I have really enjoyed the work that I've done in the city of Austin to try to build a social innovation ecosystem there, and would be happy to share more of my experience of the kinds of organizations and partnerships that we've built to support and foster the ecosystem in Austin. I thought I would start by just with some definitions. So what is social innovation, and how is it different from the conventional understanding of social impact? Social impact has traditionally been the domain of the public sector and also of not-for-profits, NGOs, charities. Many of those words are used interchangeably. And the behaviors of the traditional social impact sector were really driven by the funders. So funders were typically quite risk-averse, requiring NGOs and not-for-profits to invest heavily in evidence-based programming, where innovation and risk-taking was not as well supported because the outcomes were unknown. As well, as many of you probably know, in the traditional social impact sector, there wasn't a lot of support for investment in things that are considered overhead or infrastructure, which unfortunately includes salaries and technology and things like marketing, which could be really critical to help drive the outcomes that we're ultimately looking for. So the social innovation, the arrival of social innovation was really in response to the limitations of the social history of social impact. And the emphasis here with this term is on how we can promote more innovation, entrepreneurship, experimentation, how we can break open some of these preconceived ideas about what's appropriate to spend on overhead and talent and infrastructure. Why is this evolution taking place? Why has social innovation become so hot in the last 5 to 10 years? What we see is this traditional division between mission and money starting to break down, where once upon a time they were in silos, and we had mission-based organizations and then for-profit businesses generating the money, now starting to come together. The reasons for this, many of which I'm sure you're familiar with, include things like the public sector limitations, government simply not having the resources to be able to provide all of the social services that are required by your community, needing to be able to serve more people with less money. And it's been very difficult in traditional social impact organizations to do that, because oftentimes as you add one more beneficiary, you add one more dollar. So how could we come up with service models where you might be able to add 10 more beneficiaries for one more dollar? How could we leverage things like technology and new business models to create more capital efficient social service delivery? New technologies are bringing data and transparency that are allowing for social innovations that weren't previously possible. And as cliche as it is, the rise of the millennials really is a significant factor in driving this convergence between mission and money, the convergence around how we could take the best of the business sector in innovation and risk-taking and bring that to social impact. One of the statistics that I find very interesting is from the Deloitte Millennial Survey, and this is the 2013 one, where they asked millennials, what is the primary purpose of business? And the number one answer you can see is to improve society, with generating profit coming in as second. This is not the only value of the millennial generation that is pushing social innovation, but it is a primary one, and it's putting pressure both on businesses to be more accountable and more authentic in their social impact activities. It's also putting pressure on not-for-profits and public sector, because millennials have less faith in those institutions' ability to really make change. A second key driver influencing the rise of social innovation, particularly in the West, is the terrible unequal distribution of wealth that has happened in the last 100 years, where a handful of men control about 50% of the planet's wealth. A lot of them are entrepreneurs like Richard Branson, who means well, but what he's saying is that now he wants to apply the entrepreneurial mindset that he has had in business to giving back and solving the world's problems. But in his peer group includes billionaire entrepreneurs like Bill Gates, Mark Zuckerberg, Michael Dell, John Mackey. All of these proven and successful entrepreneurs are now saying they want to invest money in new business models to make social change. They don't believe in government, or they're skeptical of government. They're skeptical of traditional not-for-profits. How can we apply what has been so successful for them in business to the world of social change? Sometimes oversimplified in the way that they present it. So what is emerging from this is a new new range of organizations, and I'll spend the next part of this talk sharing with you what is making up the social economy. And I know most of your conference today is really to explore how each of you can become more powerful agents of change inside of the public sector and more capable intrapreneurs. I think what I'm sharing with you is actually a look to the outside at the changing landscape of social innovation around you, and hopefully posing for you the question of how your influence and your leverage within the government and within the public sector can be used to enhance this external ecosystem as well. So I'm going to be sharing with you a handful of stories that I'll be going through quite quickly, because I decided for quantity over depth in this presentation, that will paint for you pictures of new models of social impact that are emerging across this social enterprise spectrum. The first one is the story of Dell, who was my first customer. Actually, they were the first corporation I worked with when I was inside the University of Texas. And when I joined the university to run the social entrepreneurship program, they asked me to lead a student business plan competition focused on social enterprise. And Dell was the initial sponsor. In the first sponsorship, they gave $300,000 US to fund the program for 3 years. My new boss at the university said, could you go and renew that funding and possibly see if you could get it increased to perhaps $1 million over 5 years? So that seems like a reasonable task. But I went to Dell and they said, sorry, we're not going to fund this program anymore. I said, well, can we have a conversation about this? They said, we're really changing our corporate strategy that due to a variety of forces, we're not going to fund superficial programs like business plan competitions and galas and things that we don't believe achieve real meaningful social impact. I said, well, what are the kinds of things that you're looking for? And they said, we want, number one, to have employee engagement. 2, we need to see that the social impact we're having ties to our business. 3, the social impact needs to take place in all the key markets where we have employees and do business. And I said, well, would you give me a chance to put together a proposal for you? And that proposal led to this $5 million grant that Dell gave to the University of Texas. It was the largest corporate gift they had ever given the university. And that was to fund me to build for them a social innovation competition that functioned more like an accelerator for early stage social innovation ideas, pairing Dell employees with startups to do skills-based mentoring. So we ran this together for 6 years. As was mentioned earlier, we had about 25,000 student social entrepreneurs from 100 countries come through this program, 5,000 Dell employees who volunteered thousands and thousands of hours as judges and mentors. And it was one of the most significant financial investments that Dell made in social impact at that time. So what did I learn from this? One thing that I saw happening in front of my eyes was a shift in corporations from thinking about social impact as a tangential activity to their business to becoming more of a core activity. And where social impact projects historically had lived in the realm of marketing, PR, and public affairs, actually being integrated into the business in many other departments, and the corporations starting to think about how they could tap into social impact and leverage it more strategically. So here in this slide, I'm showing some of the ways that Dell was thinking about how social impact could actually enhance the business and bring value to the business instead of being thought of as just a cost center or a drain on the business, or being thought of as something that was really just a moral obligation, a penance they did, the price of doing business. No, instead, Dell was evolving to thinking about how social impact could be a platform for them to acquire new customers, to attract top talent, to retain talent, to build relationships with regulators and public officials that could influence their business. And so in this way, one of the most important things is that social impact was now getting access to much larger budgets and much more influential decision makers within the company. This trend is spreading across companies all around the world. As many of you may know, this is a small subset of all of the companies who are members of an association called CECP, which is a CEO forum for companies who are very committed to social impact and social change. And the logos that sign up on there, not only do they want to be seen, but they have to make pledges and make commitments around the authenticity of the work they're going to do around social impact. An even higher standard that some of you may be familiar with is the standard of a B Corporation, which stands for Benefit Corporation. And these are companies that go through a very rigorous assessment of things like their governance structure, the way they treat their employees, where they source their goods and inputs for their goods and services, and also the products themselves and their interactions with customers. Very few companies earn the designation of B Corporation. It's not something where you can just pay a fee and be given a badge. There's a third-party independent assessment from a nonprofit. And this is the beginning of companies really trying to elevate themselves and raise the bar in terms of their authentic engagement and authentic commitment to social impact. So this is what I would call the social enterprise spectrum, and we've just been talking about the far right side of the spectrum, which is the traditional for-profit company, and how those corporations now are ripe for you to tap into them and to engage them around questions of social impact, community benefit, and environmental change. But there's also been an arrival of some new types of organizations that you may be less familiar with that I want to share a few stories about that are in the middle, that are not quite traditional businesses, but they're also not quite traditional not-for-profits. They've become hybrids. They've been taking these business models that maybe lived historically more on the right, but applying them to the social issues that they care about more from the left. So in our first stop, we're going to go one more space over to the left, and I'm going to share with you a couple of examples of this new species of mission-based for-profit company, so you can get a flavor for what those look like. One of the most significant ones globally has been this company, Tom's Shoes, which was started by that man there, Blake McCoskey, about 10 years ago. Blake had been an entrepreneur in California in the United States with many small businesses like a laundromat. He traveled to Latin America to find himself at one point in his youth and just learned about a foot disease that was significantly affecting children. So it's an elephantitis of the foot that children get when they're walking barefoot over contaminated soils, causing severe pain and inability for them to go to school. Blake was really moved by how simple it would be to solve this health problem. So he immediately started thinking, well, maybe I'll start a not-for-profit and a charity, and I'll raise money, and I can get shoes for these children. But after thinking about it a little bit longer, he said, you know, what I'm really good at is building businesses. Could I figure out a business solution to this problem? And that led him to create Tom Shoes, where their innovative model is for every pair of Tom Shoes that one of us buys here, the company commits to giving away a free pair of shoes to a child in need. Well, this proved so successful, as you'll see in a minute, they gave away 60 million pairs of shoes in the past 10 years. They started to expand to other products. So they launched an eyewear line where for every pair of glasses that a customer like one of us buys, they would pledge to deliver sight services for one person. They launched a line of bags, and for every bag that was purchased, they would give away a safe birthing kit to a mother without access to one. Their most recent product is a coffee where for every bag they sell, they pledge a week of clean water. This is the impact they've had in the last 10 years. 60 million pairs of shoes, 400,000 people have restored sight, safe birth services to 25,000 mothers, 335,000 weeks of safe water. Any single NGO would be happy with any one of those impact lines. And to think that a company that's really only 10 years old, they began in 2006, could achieve this scale of impact across so many dimensions, I think is really testament to the power of this new approach of building for-profit businesses that have as their primary goal solving social issues. And Blake's legacy, of course, goes beyond that because he's now inspired a generation of young social entrepreneurs to apply the one-for-one model to all kinds of products, including protein bars that have a protein pack that's distributed to refugee camps, and much more. It's equally impressive. A couple of years ago, Bain Capital invested in Tom Shoes and publicly valued the company at $625 million. So when we think about the social economy and we think about the kind of economic revitalization we want to see here in South Australia, this is an example of a business that has created a lot of wealth, a lot of jobs, a lot of income, and a lot of social change. I think this is a model that we would all want to aspire to and help to nurture. I thought I would also share some smaller examples, more humble examples. This is a friend of mine from Austin, Aaron Gray, who started a for-profit social enterprise that specifically relates to the public sector. His company is called Aunt Bertha, and he created it in response to some health issues that his mother was having for a long time, where she couldn't quite figure out all the public sector services that she was eligible for. And in the United States, and perhaps here, this is a big challenge because many departments have different application processes, the systems are not unified. And so Aaron started this company to aggregate all of the data about every public service that citizens could be eligible for into one platform. And so he spent the better part of about 4 years integrating the data sets and application processes of all of these different local, state, and federal programs into one highly user-friendly interface that could be used directly by citizens or by the not-for-profit and service providers that they went to for services. So as someone would enter their zip code, the first search result would tell you how many programs in different categories were available in your area, and then either the citizen themselves or a social service worker on behalf of them would complete more detailed information about your age, your gender, how many children you have, your income, and produce a much more detailed report of all the public services that the person would be eligible for. And this is being provided in a for-profit business model, self-sustaining, not relying on government funding. Another interesting impact of Aaron's business is the data he's collecting about the searches for the public sector services. So now the government and social service agencies can get much greater insight into where the need is in which part of the city and what searches are taking place. So in addition to the benefit to the end user, also helping government be more efficient and more attuned to the needs in the community. A third example is Reaction Housing, which is also based in Austin, Texas, a small group of entrepreneurs experimenting with disaster housing. And so this is their initial EXO model, which you can see here. It was inspired actually by a Starbucks coffee cup. And they realized that you could stack a lot more coffee cups if you take the lid off. So they developed a model, a highly cost-effective and easy-to-ship emergency shelter where the top parts of the shelter are all stacked and then the bottom floor gets snapped on when they're assembled wherever they might be sent. But again, another great example of a for-profit social enterprise stepping in to provide a service that the public sector may not have been able to provide as well. So these are all examples of mission-based for-profits, but I also want to share with you across the middle of the spectrum this new generation of not-for-profits that are experimenting with different forms of earned income to be able to reach more people more cost-effectively. The first story is an Austin social entrepreneur, Zane Wildman, who traveled to Kenya and was very struck in particular, by the needs of families with disabled children. These families were ostracized from the community, the children were not given any schooling opportunities, and the parents had very little work opportunities because of the need to care for their children all day long. Zane came back to Austin and thought he would try to raise money to support the community and maybe build a school. And as he tried to raise the philanthropic dollars, just quickly realized he would never be able to raise enough. And even if he did, the Herculean effort that would take, he'd have to go back to Austin and start fundraising again to be able to do anything beyond that. So he changed his thinking, and he went back to Kenya, and he built a factory. And he decided the most valuable thing that he could provide for these families was a job. And he didn't know anything about production or clothing, but he figured it out. And at first, the women worked to create these wine totes that he shipped back to Austin and sold in one of our largest natural grocery stores, Whole Foods stores. But with the success of that and the revenue that he saw he was able to generate from that, the jobs he was able to create. He expanded to many other products that the community had the skills and ability to create with him. And so he built a fashion line, and now his bracelets are sold by American Eagle, and he has a whole, portfolio of products. That, of course, sparked his interest and thought, okay, well, how else can I make money to support this community? So another one of his social enterprises was the very first tourist-oriented coffee shop in Kenya near one of the big safaris. And so he launched his own line of coffee, Cafe Ubuntu Coffee, which is now also sold in the United States, as well as the fashion line. He has many other enterprises, and you can see here, this is how they talk about their model. So this is a not-for-profit organization, but he has on one hand these revenue-generating enterprises, a coffee shop, a fashion line, a farm, that is generating revenue and profit that he uses. He supplements with some charitable funding and public sector support to support all of the benefit activities of his not-for-profit, the school, a health clinic, and an organic garden. But you can see here the scale of impact that Zane can have by being able to supplement public support and charitable support with the revenue from his enterprises means he can do a lot more than he would otherwise. And this is how they talk about the way they make change now, is that they create community by building businesses to sustain social impact. So this is a really big mindset shift that's taking place in the not-for-profit community around how we can harness business and harness commercial activities to help us achieve more impact. A second story is my friend Gina Lamotte from Austin. She's an educator, and her passion was how she could educate youth from disadvantaged communities in the green tech and clean tech careers of the future. That many of them were not going to college, and yet they would be very well suited to skills for solar installation, clean energy. So she started her nonprofit going school by school and engaging students in after-school programs where they would learn about clean energy, sustainability, and they would engage in campus projects to build real-world skills. And for years, Gina slogged on, trying to raise the money to reach one more school and open up a program in another school, but it was really grueling work, and it was hard to raise the money and hard to scale, especially when you see kind of the way they were thinking about their programs. So as social enterprise kind of gained speed in Austin, Gina and I would talk, and she would talk with others to think about, how do I take this mission that I have in my mind, and how do I deliver it in a way that is much more scalable and much more capital efficient? How do I solve this riddle of achieving the kind of impact I want in a way that works better than what I'm doing right now? And she found her way to this. They took everything they had learned and created an online curriculum that they integrated with federal standards around STEM education, and that met different aptitudes for federal testing, and they made their curriculum available online and downloadable for a fee. And so across hundreds and now thousands of schools could pay a fee that was affordable to them, but bringing Gina a sustainable revenue model to be able to serve tens of thousands more students than she had been able to in this individual one-for-one model that she started with. So as we come to the end of this, what I've been trying to paint for you is a picture of what the Don Dunstan Foundation and I would call this social economy. That the way that we will solve our community challenges, our social and environmental issues going forward, will not be the realm solely of not-for-profits and public sector. It will now also include businesses who have very different motivations around social impact, and this new breed of social entrepreneurs. If you want to read more about it, this is a book I highly recommend called The Solution Revolution, and you can see the subtitle is How Business, Government, and Social Enterprise Are Teaming Up to Solve Society's Toughest Problems. I think for you as entrepreneurs, this could be a source of a lot of ideas and creativity. I don't have time to go through the detail of this, but another book that you might be interested in looking at is called the Rainforest Scorecard. And this is a book that actually details the 6 elements of a healthy innovation ecosystem. So leadership, culture, resources, frameworks, role models, and activities. And again, as public sector entrepreneurs, I think you have tremendous opportunity to shape each of these 6 elements and build a healthy social impact ecosystem here in South Australia. So my concluding slide is, after 3 days of being here in South Australia, what are 5 things that you, as public sector entrepreneurs, could do to boost the social economy in this state? I'll just spend a short second on each one of them. So procurement is the most obvious one. Think about how we might apply procurement policies that are preferential to the kinds of companies and enterprises that are capital efficient, that are providing innovative solutions to social enterprises. So, affecting or modifying procurement policies to be favorable to those types of organizations. The second would be around education and skill development. Social innovation is a set of skills, and there's now a lot of curriculum out there, like Gina's curriculum from EcoRise, that can teach young people how to be more powerful social innovators. And I think the Fund My Community initiative that you're pioneering here in this state is very exciting. But imagine now if we weren't just giving community members the opportunity to allocate money, but actually giving them the skills to solve their own community problems. So I think the opportunity to infuse your education curriculum with skills of social innovation would be a tremendous opportunity to boost the ecosystem here. You can incentivize innovation like the kind you've seen in my talk through things like competitions and prizes. The Sharing Economy Prize is one example, but you could imagine running prizes on specific social issues to incentivize more innovation. The fourth one is to attract more innovators. So the reality is the social innovation landscape in South Australia is still very early. There aren't that many role models, and there's a lot you can learn from the successes of other communities. So what about hosting an accelerator or a conference or other types of incentives? Perhaps you might have heard of Startup Chile, where the country of Chile was incentivizing entrepreneurs to relocate there for access to low-cost office space and some financial benefits. Why not think about how you might be able to attract proven social entrepreneurs from other cities like San Francisco and New York, in Europe, in Asia, to South Australia to bring their expertise and their solutions to your community? And the last one is to provide risk-tolerant capital. So I know many people will ask the public sector to invest directly into entrepreneurs, and of course that is effective, but you can actually have an even greater effect by thinking about how you could leverage public sector capital to incentivize more private capital to flow into this space. So for example, you could create a guarantee fund that might guarantee investments made by private sector investors into early stage social enterprises. So think about what kinds of tools you could create that provide risk-tolerant capital to unlock more private sector capital for this space. So I'm a few minutes over time. I would love to speak with any of you more if you have ideas or questions or interest in this. Here is the way you can also connect with the Don Dunstan Foundation. Thank you very much for convening and hosting this event and having me here. It's really been a pleasure. Thank you.